YouTube.com. I'm here today to talk about an issue that I think is very important. It's kind of overshadowed by the whole climate change stuff, which I think is not as important. I don't think it's real, really personally, but this I think is very real and very problematic, and no one really wants to deal with it. Right? The UN ain't talking about it. The governments ain't talking about it. And most people don't give a shit, but you can be better prepared for it. Right? You can be better prepared for it and end up better off. Because of this, gasoline is going to be like $6 or $8 a gallon easily. Right? I pay $40 a week of it because I pay about $3 a gallon. And that would be, that would go up to like, if it was $6, it would be like $80 a week. Or if it was $8, it would be like $100 a week. It would be really expensive. And so it's going to get much more expensive. So I don't think the world is hopeless, right? I'm not a doomer, right? But this is a problem, and it's a problem people don't want to deal with because it's hard. Because people don't want to deal with things that are hard, right? So we are entering peak oil, coal, natural gas, and maybe uranium as well, right? It would take much longer for uranium to peak, but if we frantically replaced all our coal, oil, and natural gas with it, it would peak within 20 to 50 years, right? If we replaced all our electricity needs with it, right, all our existing nuclear power and all of our coal, natural gas with it, we would have used up it within 20 to 50 years. Right, that's a safe assumption to make, right? So we are suffering from basically peak coal, oil, and natural gas, and we are in the 2020s, and that will happen in the 2030s most likely. It could happen earlier. It could happen maybe in the 2040s, but we have basically 10 or 20 years left of relatively cheap gasoline, diesel, and electricity, and gas, natural gas. You can get those things for pretty cheap. You can get electricity in America, it's 13 cents a kilowatt hour. In Canada, it's even less. It's like 8 cents. Canada's in a better position because they're basically hydropower. But here, it's mostly like coal, natural gas, a few nuclear power plants, and a little bit of hydro and renewables. But basically, because these resources are peaking by the 2030s, so by the 2030s, those should be like in the 20 cents range, like 20, 25, 30 cents a kilowatt hour. And oil peaking in the 2030s, that'll be like, $6, $8 a gallon. Some people in some parts of the world already pay that, and so they're used to that. But it would go up even further there. It would be like $20 a gallon. It would be insanely priced. And it's definitely a problem. So we have a decline in these resources. Now, people are going to say, well, we're never going to run out of coal, oil, and natural gas. And they're technically correct, but they're wrong at the same time. The problem is not what is actually in the ground. The problem is our ability to get it out of the ground, right? You see, it costs money to get it out of the ground. It isn't free. Right? It costs both money and energy to get the energy which you can sell to get money out of the ground, basically. It costs you money to extract it. And, for example, with oil, crude oil, which is to say conventional crude oil, the stuff that's good, cheap, stuff that we like, that could be sold for, like $20, $40 a barrel, maybe $60 a barrel, that peaked in 2006. Right, that peaked in 2006, and we haven't found we've been able to keep the price down through shale tar sands and fracking, basically, and that's been able to keep the price down. Right, that's been able to drive the price down to a level that we can afford. But but the IEA, I believe, predicts by 2030. That it will peak, and that will be all sources, not just crude or conventional. And so we've built a ton of offshore drilling, fracking, shale, tar sands. But even with all that, that's all going to peak by 2030. right? And there's like this map, and it shows when each country has peaked and when they will most likely peak, and it's all around 2028 to 2032, and that would be the time when oil peaks, and then after that happens, it would go up a lot in price. So basically, go up to $6 a gallon, like it did in 2006 to 2008. I remember when that happened, and it was just insanity, right? It was just like everything was just falling apart, and it was a problem. So that's part of the issue. So there's oil, and then with coal, people say there's like hundreds of years of it left. They're wrong. There's hundreds of years of it left in the ground. There's not hundreds of years of it left that we can extract and get out of the ground. The stuff we get today is very low quality. The energy density of coal keeps on declining. So again, you have the issue, how much does it cost for the capital? How much energy do you have to put in to get out? And so we get less energy out, and it's less profitable than it used to be. And so it's much more expensive energy to get out of the ground. So we have plenty of coal in the ground. It's not the type of coal that we used to get that was really cheap. We have to blast mountainsides. We have to destroy mountains to get it. And that's why it's really horrible for the environment, and it's really expensive, but that's what we have to get to feed our appetite for coal. And India keeps using more of it, basically. Like in 2019 they used more coal than they did in 2018, and in 2020 they're going to use even more. Like, it increased both numerically and proportionally. It increased from 73% to 76%, and that's not very good. That's not a very good thing at all, because they keep having this this rapid economic growth with so many people. It's just going to greatly increase the demand for coal, and we're not going to be able to meet it, basically, because it has so many people, right? India has so many people and so much economic growth that is going to constrain coal as a resource, basically. Coal as a resource will be greatly strained by India and Africa and other places. But basically all the developing economies are using huge amounts of coal, and it is draining the resource. And again, people talk about the environmental problems, but that is a problem with it. But we're depleting the resource. I think China's own self-mined coal has already peaked, right? It's already reached a peak, and they cannot get more of it. And the same stories with this. It's also the same with natural gas, right? We've been able to get more of it, but eventually that will peak around the same time, the 2030s. Basically, if you look at peak coal, natural gas, and oil, it's all around the 2030s, and we are in the 2020s. So we're only 10 or 15 years away, depending on which resource you're talking about, right? Only 10 or 15 years away. And then people are going to say, well, we could switch to nuclear power. Well, the problem with that is if we switch all of our electricity to nuclear power, we would use up the resource in like a few decades of the uranium we have available in the ground that we know how to get at. Now, we could get more of it eventually, but we only have 200 years of it at current consumption. But if we replaced everything with nuclear power, we'd have 20 to 50 years of it left. And that's not very good. And that's a problem. That's a problem we have to deal with, right? And so we have to find some other fuel technology like the fast breeder reactor. That exists, and that could be deployed today, but you'd have to spend money on that and whatnot. And so the fast breeder reactor, we could use the nuclear waste we have, and that would give us 400 years worth of fuel, roughly. And that would do something, right? But then 400 years is a long time. I'm not saying it isn't, but we'd have to figure out within those 400 years some way of advancing past that, or finding another source of fuel. So nuclear, it's a viable technology, but we need to find some other source of fuel. And I know someone's going to bring up the whole thorium thing, but we haven't developed it. There aren't any. You can't just go to some company and buy a thorium reactor. It has to be developed by someone. What we have today are conventional uranium reactors. That we have 200 years of that left, and we have fast breeder reactors. And really, with the conventional, we have 20 to 50 years of it left if we made it our main power source. And we have 400 years of nuclear waste to burn through. So that is the problem. So people are going to bring up the thorium thing. We don't have it yet. It could be developed. Right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying we don't have it. We couldn't deploy it within 10 years, which is what we need to do. Right? We'd really need to deploy that in 10 years, and we can't. And it doesn't look like we're going to. Right? So we have coal, oil, and natural gas in depletion. And by the 2030s, they'll all peak. And nuclear power, if it were to replace it, we would deplete the uranium we have today, and we'd have to find some other places to mine new mines to find it, oceans. We'd have to burn through waste and things like that. We'd have to find some new way to create it, basically, or some new way to get fuel for it. And so that is the reality we are facing now. If we spent huge amounts of money, we could build a bunch of hydroelectric dams in Africa and South America and India, and we could build a few in North America. And if we spent a bunch of money, we could also build geothermal energy and biomass, and that could replace a good amount of our power. And we could maybe develop the thorium and the fast breeder reactor technology, but it's not necessarily something you could deploy or like at this moment, basically. So basically, the main energy sources, we don't have a lot of them. We need to find a replacement, basically, and it doesn't look like we have one. And so what should you do, basically? Well, what you should do is try to move to a place where you don't have to drive a car. That can help you a ton. Like a place where you have public transit, right? Like or you live off the grid and you create your own power, basically. So those are your options. You can live in like a European style city where you have public transit, or you can live off the grid, and that you can use way less power that way. And you need to figure out a way to cut back the amount of power you use, and cut back the amount of resources you use, because those things will get more expensive. Trying to think like for example, Americans have dryers and Europeans don't have that. Figure out some way to not have a dryer, or the types of houses we use, or just our lifestyles are very energy consumption. Move to some place where you have, if you live in an urban area where you have public transit that's walkable, right, where you can walk and where you can ride a bicycle to work, and that would be a way. It's basically you move to a place where you don't need a car. And you would not only move to a place where you don't need a car, move to a place that is not powered by coal, oil, natural gas, or nuclear power. Now, that's hard. That's a hard place to find, but they do exist. Like in Canada, most of that is hydroelectricity, basically. If you can find a place that's powered by hydroelectricity, that is like a great place to be in. So you need to find a place where you don't need a car, where you can walk, you can bike, you can use a tram, right? In European cities, they have trams. And you need to find a city that's not powered by coal, oil, natural gas, or nuclear power. And what's the word for it? Another thing you could do, right, if you live in the Southwest like I do, which is not a great place to be in, considering these realities, is to buy an electric car and buy solar panels. And that costs some money, but those are going down in price. But basically, if you own those, then you'll be better able to endure 30 cent a kilowatt hour electricity and $5 a gallon gas. You can already get an electric car for $10,000 in China. by 2022, you'll be able to get a high quality one for like $20,000 to $25,000. You can get a really good one today for $35,000. But within a few years, if you just set aside some money, right? It's hard to save money, I understand that. But for something like this, you need to be saving your money. And that's what I'm trying to do myself. Because if you don't, you're going to have to endure those things. You're going to have to endure 30 cents an hour electricity, and you're going to have to endure $6 to $10 a gallon for gas. So those are your real options. You live off the grid, you move to some European-style city, or you buy, if you like live in the Southwest like I do, and a friend of mine does, 2 of my friends live in Nevada. That's what you got to do. You got to get hydro. You got to move somewhere that's powered by hydro and has public transit. Move somewhere, buy an electric car and solar panels, or you live off the grid, right? Basically, you live off the grid and you become self-sustaining. And on top of having the solar panels and things like that and the electric car, right? You can get solar panels, I think, for $10,000, and the electric car you'll be able to eventually get for less than $20,000 by 2022. You should also grow your own food as much as possible. And yeah, so basically, those are your options considering the reality we face. The world's not going to come to an end, right? The world's going to keep on going on. Technology will keep getting better and things like that. It's just that life is going to get more expensive and it's going to get shittier. And you should be prepared for that, right? Right. So when there needs to be a $20 an hour minimum wage, you're prepared for that. Basically that's what this is all going to mean. You're going to need a $20 an hour minimum wage, or a $30 an hour minimum wage, and that's not sustainable, right? That's the reality we face. So we face a reality of expensive electricity, expensive gasoline. You can prepare for it personally, and the world could prepare for it if it built, like if it cut back its energy usage, right? If we all consumed less of it, and if we all built like a bunch of these, like geothermal power plants, hydroelectric plants, and found some sort of new source of power, some new source of fuel for nuclear power, and also I forgot to mention, we have a bunch of nuclear power plants that are going out of service in a few decades. And what are they going to be replaced with? Well, they're going to be replaced with more coal, oil, and natural gas. And that's going to drive up demand even more. So that is the reality we face, and you need to prepare for it. And if the world wants to do something, it should start acting now. It should have started acting 20 or 30 years ago, and it didn't. We've been able to adapt by developing electric cars and things like that, but that's the reality we face. It's going to suck. It's going to be shitty. I think that we will eventually overcome it, but it's going to be okay through the 2020s. It's going to suck through the 2030s and the 2040s, basically. So, Thomas Christensen, signing out.